31, my Amish wife tried to leave me after 12 years. I finally understand why she had her shawl folded over her arm. The good one. The black one her mother gave her the week before our wedding. It was 4:30 in the morning and the kitchen lamp was hissing low because I hadn't trimmed the wick in 3 days. And Rebecca was standing by the back door with her hand on the latch like she'd been standing there a while. I came down the stairs in my socks. I didn't say her name. I couldn't. My throat had that locked up feeling. The one I get when one of the horses goes down in the field and I know before I know. She turned, slow, like she didn't want to. "Joseph," she said. Just that. There was a jar on the table between us. A small brown jar, mullein and yarrow, the tea she'd been brewing every night for almost a year, and I had never once asked her what it was for. Not once. 12 years of marriage, and I had walked past that jar maybe 400 times. She had the shawl folded over her arm. I want to say I understood right then. I didn't. It took me another 2 months, a letter from her sister, and one quiet sentence from the old broker down the road before I understood what that jar really was. I was 34 years old. Quick pause. My name is Joseph, and this is... If these stories stay with you, if they remind you of something the old ones knew, subscribe. It's free, and it's the reason I can keep telling them. Tell me in the comments, what's the one remedy your mother or grandmother brewed at night that nobody ever explained to you? And if you want to go further, a super chat or a membership, that's you telling me these old ways are worth remembering. That keeps this going. Now, back to what happened. In our community, the women carry the remedies. That's just how it is. The men know the land, what root grows where, what bark to strip in March, what to dig after the first frost. But the women, they're the ones who brew it, steep it, hand it across the kitchen in a cup without saying much. My dad used to say it plain. A man finds it, a woman makes it work. And so when Rebecca started keeping that brown jar on the back of the stove, simmering low after the children were asleep, I thought nothing of it. That's what the old ones knew. You don't ask a woman about her tea. You drink what she hands you, and you trust the hands that grew up watching her own ma'am do the same. But there's another rule, one nobody says out loud. The remedies a woman brews for the family, she shares. The remedies she brews only for herself, at night, after everyone else has gone to bed. Those are different. Those mean something is wrong. I knew that. Somewhere in the back of my head I knew that. My own ma'am used to brew a bitter thing with motherwort and skullcap the year my sister Anna was born too early, and I remember Dad standing in the doorway of their bedroom one night, just watching her drink it, his hand rubbing the callus on his right thumb. Over and over. I was maybe 9. I didn't know what I was seeing. I just knew the house was quieter than it should have been, and I told myself. The night I noticed Rebecca's jar, that I'd ask her about it on Sunday. Then Sunday came. Then another. Then a year. Rebecca and I married when I was 22 and she was 20. Her father had a dairy 2 ridges over from ours, and I'd known her since we were children, but I didn't really see her until the summer she turned 18, and she brought a poultice of comfrey and plantain to our farm when my younger brother Eli sliced his leg open on the hay rake. She came up the lane with her sleeves rolled past her elbows and a bowl of green pulp in her hands, and she knelt in the dirt next to Eli and didn't flinch once. Not at the blood, not at his crying. She just packed that poultice down and held it and said, "It'll hold. Give it a day." It held. 3 days later he was walking, and I thought, no, I knew. I was going to marry that girl. For the first 8 years, we were good. I want to say that clearly, because what came after doesn't erase what came before. We had 4 children, Samuel, Mary, little Eli, and Lydia. And Rebecca was the kind of mother who knew which child was sick before they said anything. She'd be kneading bread and she'd stop and turn and say, "Samuel's feverish." And he would be, every time. She kept a shelf in the cellar with 26 jars on it. I counted once. 26. Elderberry syrup, garlic honey, lobelia tincture in the dark blue glass, comfrey salve, plantain oil, mullein for the lungs, yarrow for the blood, raw onion poultices wrapped in flannel, a cloudy thing in a mason jar she called the bone tea that she only brought down when Gross Daddy's hip was acting up. She knew that shelf the way I knew the back 40. What I didn't know, and this is the part I keep turning over, is that somewhere around the 9th year, she added a jar I never noticed, or I noticed it and didn't see it. There's a difference. The thing is, In our community, a man works dawn to dusk and he comes in and he eats and he prays and he sleeps. And the inside of the house, the shelves, the jars, the quiet hours after the lamps go down, that's not his country. I told myself that was respect. Looking back, I'm not sure what to call it. I think there's a word for a man who lives in a house for 12 years and doesn't see what's on the back of his own stove. I just don't want to say it yet. The night she stood at the door with her shawl folded, the kitchen smelled like mullein and something else, something sharp underneath, like vinegar gone old. The lamp was hissing. The floorboards were cold even through my socks. Outside, one of the buggy horses kicked the stall wall once, the way she does when a fox crosses the yard. Rebecca had her hair pinned, but her cap was sitting on the table next to the brown jar, and that, more than anything, was what stopped my breath. A woman doesn't leave her cap on the table. Not at 4:30 in the morning, not unless she's already left, somewhere inside, hours before her feet got to the door. I said her name finally, Rebecca. She didn't answer right away. She looked at the jar, then at me. Then she said, "Joseph, I made this for myself. Every night for almost a year. Do you know what's in it?" I shook my head. I didn't. I should have. She picked it up. Her hand was steady, steadier than mine, and she said, "Mulleiny, yarrow, a little bit of motherwort, and skullcap." She set it back down. "It's the tea your mam used to drink, the year Anna came." And then she said the thing I will hear for the rest of my life. She said, "I've been losing something for 9 years, and you never asked once." I didn't move. I want to tell you I went to her. I didn't. My feet stayed on that cold floor and my hands hung at my sides, and I just looked at her. And I know. That was the moment she decided, not before, right then. Because a man who doesn't move when his wife says something like that has already answered. She picked up her cap, she put it on, she tied it slow. "I'm going to my sister's," she said. "For a while, the children stay with you. You'll know what to feed them. You watched me long enough." And she opened the door, and the cold came in, smelling like wet leaves and the cow barn, and she walked down the porch steps without looking back. The complication is the part that took me months to understand, so I'll say it plain. Rebecca had lost 3 babies between Lydia and the door. 3. I knew about one, the first one, the one she bled out in the bathroom the spring little Eli turned 2. I held her through that night. I thought we had grieved it together. What I didn't know is that there were 2 more after. Quiet ones. The kind a woman handles by herself with the jars on the shelf and a tea on the back of the stove. Because she had learned, from her ma'am, from my ma'am, from every ma'am before, that a woman's grief is hers to carry, and a man has enough on him with the farm and the herd and the bishop. Nobody taught her that. She just saw it done, and I saw it done, and neither of us understood that what got passed down wasn't strength. It was silence. The motherwort and skullcap tea, I learned later, from the old browker down the road, a man named Abram who must have been 80. That mix isn't just for the body. He told me, sitting on his porch with a cup of it between his own hands, "Joseph, this tea is for a woman whose heart is trying to forget what her body remembers." He said the old ones brewed it for women who had lost children and had nobody to say it to. He said his own wife drank it for 16 years before she told him why. 16 years. He wasn't a hard man. I need you to understand that. He did what his father did, and his father did what his did, and none of us knew different. The remedy was real. The wisdom was real. The silence around it was what was killing us. After Rebecca left, I kept her shelf exactly the way she had it, 26 jars. I didn't move one. The children needed elderberry that first week. Lydia caught something at school, and I had to stand in front of that shelf for 10 minutes before I could pick up the right jar, because every one of them had her handwriting on the lid in pencil, and her handwriting was the smallest, neatest thing in our whole house. I started brewing the children's teas myself at night, after they were asleep, the same hour she used to. And I'll tell you something I'm not proud of. The first month, I'd sit at the kitchen table with the lamp low, and I'd talk to the jar of mullein and yarrow like it was her. Out loud, like a fool. My dad would have laughed at me. Or maybe he wouldn't have. I'm not sure anymore what he would have done. The harder thing was the men. I didn't tell anyone for almost 6 weeks. Rebecca was at her sister Hannah's, 2 counties over, and the story I gave at church was that she was helping with Hannah's new baby. People nodded. People always nod. But at a barn raising that fall, we were putting up a new dairy barn for the Stoltzfus family. I was working the beam line with my brother Eli and our neighbor Mose, and Mose said quiet, without looking up from his hammer, "How's Rebecca doing at her sister's?" 7 words. That's all. But the way he said sisters, I knew he knew. And then Eli said lower, "Mine went to her mother's, year we lost the twins." I almost dropped my end of the beam. We sat on the new sill plate at lunch, the 3 of us, eating cold ham sandwiches Mam had packed, and Mose told us about his wife Sarah brewing the same tea. Mullein, yarrow, motherwort, skullcap, for 2 years after their second stillbirth, and he never asked. Eli said his Rachel had brewed a different one, with red raspberry leaf and something bitter he couldn't name, and he never asked either. 3 men on a beam, 3 wives, 3 jars on 3 back stoves, and none of us had ever spoken a word about it until that day. Mose finally said, "Joseph, we do this to them. We don't mean to, but we do." 4 winters later, Moses Sarah passed of a thing the English doctor said had been growing in her for years. He told me at the funeral that she'd brewed her last tea the week before. He'd finally asked her what was in it. She'd finally told him. A week. I came to the word for what we had done one Tuesday in March, in the back of the old Brauker's house, with a book open on the table between us. Abram had a shelf of books I didn't know existed. Old German ones, handwritten ones, one bound in cracked leather that his great-grandfather had carried from the old country. He pushed one toward me and tapped a page with a knuckle bent sideways from 40 years of setting bones. The word was in Pennsylvania Dutch. I won't try to spell it. But it meant, roughly, the grief that is brewed alone. He said the old healers had a name for it because they had seen it in every generation. He said, "Joseph, the remedy was never just the tea. The remedy was a woman who knew what was in the tea, and a man who knew enough to sit down beside her while she drank it." I put my face in my hands. I didn't cry. I just sat there with my hands over my eyes and my elbows on his table, and I felt something move in my chest that I think had been stuck there since I was 9 years old, watching my dad in that doorway. For the boy who I had been, the one who walked past that jar 400 times, I felt a grief I don't have good words for. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't cruel. He was doing exactly what he had been shown. That's what the old ones knew, and that's what the old ones didn't know. They knew the plants. They knew the roots. They knew which leaf to chew for a toothache, and which bark to boil for a fever. What they hadn't worked out yet, what we hadn't worked out yet, is that a remedy you brew alone in the dark, year after year, with nobody to ask what it's for, becomes its own kind of sickness. I tried to explain it once to an Englishman at the feed store, a kind man who'd asked after Rebecca. He nodded the way English people nod when they're being polite. He didn't understand. How could he? You'd have to grow up inside the silence to know what it weighs. I drove the buggy out to Hannah's the next Saturday. 8 hours on the road. I had the brown jar with me, washed and refilled. I'd brewed it myself, the same recipe, from Rebecca's shelf. I sat in Hannah's kitchen and Rebecca came down the stairs, and she stopped on the 3rd step when she saw what was on the table. I said, "I know what's in it now. I know what it's for. I should have known 9 years ago. I should have known 12. She came down the rest of the way. She sat. She didn't drink it. She just put her hand around the jar and held it. And then she said, "Joseph, the tea isn't the apology. You sitting here is." That was almost 2 years ago. She came home that spring. The Amish life gave me 3 things I'll carry the rest of my days, and I want to name them right. The first is the smell of cut hay in July, the kind that hits you when the wagon comes in from the south field at dusk and you can taste the sun in it. The second is the sound of my dad's hand plane on white oak in the wood shop on a Saturday morning, that long clean shk that meant a man was making something that would outlive him. The third, and this is the one I had to nearly lose to find, is my wife's hand around a warm jar at our own kitchen table, and the sound of her voice telling me what's in it. The land doesn't lie, and neither does a woman who's finally been asked. What I know now is this: wisdom dressed in plain clothes is still wisdom, and silence dressed in plain clothes is still silence. The old ways gave us the remedies. They didn't give us the asking. That's the work my generation has to do. to keep the jars on the shelf and start using our voices around them. Rebecca and I brew the tea together now, on Tuesday nights, after the children are asleep. Sometimes we drink it for the babies we lost. Sometimes we drink it because she's tired. Sometimes we drink it because I am. The remedy didn't change. The two people drinking it did. If you grew up somewhere your grandmother brewed a tea she never named, I see you. If you watched your ma'am carry something heavy in a quiet kitchen and you never knew the weight of it, I see you. If you're a man who's just now figuring out that the women in your life have been healing themselves alone for years, I see you. And it's not too late. You carry something old, and that is enough to start with. To the woman still inside the community, brewing in the dark, your jar is not invisible to everyone. To the one who left, carrying her own grief in a city apartment, the recipe is still in you. To the Englishman who feels something pull him back toward his grandfather's garden, that pull is real, follow it. To the one whose grandmother knew a remedy she never wrote down, sit with the oldest woman left in your family this week and ask. To the one modern medicine couldn't save your wife from, brother, I am so sorry, and you are not alone. Wherever you are in this, I see you, and you are not alone. Tell me in the comments, what's the tea, the salve, the poultice your family brewed that nobody ever explained? I want to know the name of it. I want to know who made it. There's so much more I haven't said yet. There are remedies, and stories around those remedies I haven't been ready to share. But I'm getting closer. If these stories sit with you, stay with me at subscribe so the next one finds you. And if you'd like to send a super chat or join the membership, that's you saying these old ways are worth remembering. And that's what keeps me telling them. Go home tonight. Ask her what's in the jar.